As anti-government protests, violent clashes, and unrest take over the Central Asian country of Kyrgyzstan, concerns in the international community are rising over what's to follow. For more on this, we are now joined live from New York by RT's Anastasia Churkina, who is minutes away from the United Nations headquarters. Anastasia, what's the latest coming out of the UN right now?
Well, Priya, we have been hearing from the United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, who has been calling for restraint and dialogue so that further bloodshed can be avoided in Kyrgyzstan, where already dozens of people have been killed in an anti-government uprising. Now, Ban Ki-moon has actually just ended a tour across Central Asia, and one of the countries he visited was, of course, Kyrgyzstan. He was there this Saturday, and according to what we're hearing coming out of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon is in shock about what is going on the ground and is closely monitoring the situation. When Ban Ki-moon was there in Kyrgyzstan, he had made statements really praising Kyrgyzstan's attempts and handling of the attempts to really stabilize situation in Afghanistan. He was also talking about how it's important for the country to respect human rights and freedom of press. So now he's watching the situation and, like the rest of the international community, really hoping that it can come to a close.
Now, the United States has strong strategic interest in what goes on in Kyrgyzstan. How are American officials reacting to all the unrest?
Well, Priya, that is a very important question because the Manas air base that the United States has in in Kyrgyzstan that we have been reporting on earlier throughout this hour is really the only air base the United States has in Central Asia. And like we have been saying, this is a very important location for Washington because it relies on it to be able to supply the NATO forces in Afghanistan. And apart from the millions of dollars that the United States spends annually on this particular air base, also the U.S. government contributes as much as $90 million every year to the Kyrgyz government, which analysts are saying the future of which is still is unclear as of now. And we've been hearing from the White House saying that they're following the situation very closely. They're calling for restraint. We have been following the U.S. embassy in Bishkek, the Kyrgyz capital, saying that they're very concerned with what's going on the ground. They're calling for negotiations between both sides of the dispute, and the U.S. State Department is also, of course, watching the situation, and they're also calling for peace and restraint. We've been hearing from U.S. officials that the airbase in Manas Air Base has not actually been affected by the violence, but they did put a number of measures in place in order to provide security for the personnel at the airbase, which is located about 19 miles from the capital of Bishkek.
And Anastasia, obviously the situation doesn't just affect the United States. There are many other players. Tell me a little bit more about the European Union, China, which borders Kyrgyzstan, and Russia.
Well, Priya, it's important that throughout the last day or so, the international community has really been jointly calling for restraint. We have been hearing from the European Union saying that it's important that the parties to the dispute gather around the negotiating table and start up a dialogue immediately. China, like you said, a neighboring country to Kyrgyzstan, has been saying that order is essential. It must be put in place as soon as possible. Russia has been saying that, you know, even though the situation is quite complicated on the ground, it's important that a democratic way is found and not violence to settle the political situation in Kyrgyzstan. We've been hearing from Iran, too, that has also been supporting certain restraint measures to take place on the ground so the situation wouldn't spin out even more out of control. And Germany, quite importantly, it's the only European Union member that has an embassy in Kyrgyzstan, has also been saying they're very concerned and that they're hoping that situation on the ground can come to a halt.
Well, that's RT's Anastasia Churkina reporting live from our New York studios. We'll be hearing more from Anastasia in our upcoming shows.